Good day. Today is Sunday, September 25th, 2022. Some of you have emailed me. I appreciate that. I skipped yesterday on my daily walk with the Tao. I was involved most of the day in teaching an online seminar, and by the time the seminar was over, I sat down and realized that I was just Taoed out and had nothing more to say. So thank you for checking on me. I'm back. I'm looking at chapter 41 of the Tao Te Ching this afternoon. Chapter 41 says, there seem to be three responses to the Tao. Some hear of it and know in their souls that it is true. They devote their lives to knowing it more fully. Some hear of it and say, that sounds interesting, and think about it now and then. Some hear of it and say, absurd, airy-fairy nonsense, and they laugh out loud. This is why we have these adages. Great wisdom seems childlike. Great power seems weak. True goodness seems suspect. Great art seems ordinary and plain. Great love seems uncaring, and even truth itself seems false. The adages in the second part of this poem indicate why people have these indifferent or even hostile responses, because it's so countercultural and contrary to conventional wisdom and conventional ideas of power and safety and achievement and success and taking care of oneself. Totally counter to the conventional ideas that we've inherited. And even though for most of my life I would acknowledge that the first response, knowing in my soul that it's true, but the other responses live in my mind too. Conventional ideas of power and greatness can quickly dominate my responses, bringing out fear, anger, cynicism, distrust. And although the first response of knowing in my soul that it's true, devoting my life to knowing it more fully has been a difficult path. I see how these three responses arise in my life when I watch videos of Thich Nhat Hanh. If you don't know Thich Nhat Hanh's work, was a Buddhist master teacher, the gentlest and one of the most powerful yet gentle man that I've ever seen in my life. His teachings are available on YouTube in many, many forms. He was a man who authentically lived the Tao. I honor him. I would like to know the Tao as fully as he did. Yet depending on my mood, I watch and listen to his words and I think, oh, that's inspirational. But, not for me right now. I don't live in a monastery. Or sometimes I'll watch him and I'll honestly think, oh, come on. How can you smile and speak such gentle words? You don't know how hard it is. And then I realize he did know how hard it is. He became a monk when he was a teenager living in Vietnam. He stood in the streets with his brothers and sisters and protested the war and garnered the ire of both the Viet Cong and North Vietnamese and the South Vietnamese government backed by the power of the United States. And he was shot at and hunted by both sides. He saw his brothers and sisters killed right and left. He saw his best friend immolate himself in protest of the war. He traveled the world to speak against the war, and he was banned from his own country for most of his life. Yes, he knows how hard it is, and his gentle, powerful wisdom comes from that life of devotion to the Tao. He was devoted to the Tao as taught by the Buddha, but it's still the Tao. It's taught by many teachers under many names. It's always the way. It's taught by Buddha, it was taught by Jesus, and it was taught by many, many others. And any life of true devotion faces these responses. You know it's true and you devote yourself to it. You think it's interesting and dismiss it, or you laugh at it and say it's nonsense. Impractical, world-denying nonsense. Now, I'm not holding myself as an example of a life of devotion. I've oscillated all of my life. But in my soul, my essence, I've returned again and again and again. And maybe that is what a life of devotion is like. I don't know. I often wanted to be in a monastery, but it was never my path. Possibly because of this oscillation. But I know that a monastery isn't required. The devotion is required, the knowing that it's true against all conventional wisdom otherwise. And as the years go by, that devotion has grown. And it's gotten more and more solid and pervasive as I've come to realize that conventional wisdom and power is actually the absurd, the futility, the irrational path of life. A path that's so absurd and futile that it's destroying the world. And the only path is the path of devotion. It's not something that we can think of as interesting and add it to our life to occupy a certain little part of it. It's not something we can dismiss as nonsense. It's the truth. And the only way to truly experience it and perhaps do our greatest work for the world is to devote ourselves to it. In whatever framework we live, however our life is structured, nothing stops it from being devoted. Devoted. So I'm returning to Thich Nhat Hanh and letting myself see him for the man that he was, a man like Mahatma Gandhi, a man like many others who are nameless and unknown, whose life was devoted to the Tao, by whatever name they called it, and they knew in their souls that it was true. So I really guess I'm calling. I guess this is a little bit of an evangelical speech. Do you really want to spend the rest of your life thinking, oh, that's kind of interesting. Yeah, I like that. Or, oh, that's absurd. It's not. If you think it's interesting, keep going toward it. Keep returning. Keep returning. Keep returning. Well, it's nice to be back with you. I'll look forward to seeing you tomorrow down the road.